नमस्कार दर्शकवृन्द, आजको यस विशेष संवादमा स्वागत छ र म मनिष झा। आज हामीले यस संवादमा नेपालको लागि नेपालको शिक्षा क्षेत्रमा धेरै नै योगदान पुर्याउनु भएको एउटा भिन्न कथालाई प्रस्तुत गर्दैछौँ र उहाँ हुनुहुन्छ श्री जोन वुड। John Wood, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So we'll be talking about your journey and your contribution to the country. And I would like to thank you for your contribution and everything you have done so far. And so I would like to start with, I saw that in your book, recent book, that it was 1998 you came to this country for the first time. And today again, after 17 years, you are here. So would you like to explain us a little bit your experience about differences in this 17 years you saw in this country?
Yeah, well, working in the education sector, that's probably the area where I'm best able to comment on the differences I see. When I first came to Nepal in 1998, I think it was very rare for schools to have properly functioning libraries and for children to be checking books out and taking books home and getting into a habit of reading from a young age. That's changed a lot here in Nepal. Room to Read alone has opened 3,700 libraries across Nepal, serving well over 1 million children. So I see a lot of change now happening in that whole area where we are publishing Nepalese language children's literature. Kids have libraries in their schools. Kids are reading from a young age. Also, girls' education is growing increasingly popular in Nepal. When I first came here in 1998, it was very rare to see girls in the rural areas in grades 8, 9, or 10. A lot of girls didn't make it into a single day of secondary school. This year in Nepal, we met this morning with the education minister, who told us that more girls sat for the SLC, school leaving certificate exam this year in Nepal than boys. So that's a very, very big change, and I'm very proud of the team at Room to Read in Nepal, because I think that we've helped to play a role in both those changes of children reading more and more girls going into and through secondary school.
दर्शकवृन्द, उहाँ रुम टु रिडका को संस्थापक हुनुहुन्छ र हामीले एउटा किताब पढ्ने मौका पाएको थियौँ, माइक्रोसफ्टदेखि बाहुन डाँडासम्म। त्यो उहाँको कथामा आधारित किताब हो र उहाँले माइक्रोसफ्ट नामक विश्वविख्यात कम्पनी छोडेर नेपालमा शिक्षा र लाइब्रेरीको मार्फतले शिक्षामा उहाँले योगदान पुर्याउन सुरु गर्नुभयो। So recently I got chance to read your second book, and in that book I also saw that your parents has been here in this country before during one of the new library opening ceremony in one of the village. Most of the parents, or most of our parents, they dream that their children will go to join company like Microsoft. How was it for your parents, like when you left that job and you came and your parents came with you to see that your dream coming true, and you are opening a new library in one of the remote villages of Nepal?
Well, I think I was very fortunate in that in 1998, when I first went to the Annapurna circuit to Lamjung province, and I met the school administrators in the village of Bahun Danda, and they asked me to help because they had an empty library. They didn't have any children's books for their 450 students. And when I went back a year later to deliver books to that library, my father came with me. And my father saw how passionate I was, that I had made a lot of money at a young age. I didn't really know what to do with it. I didn't really want to spend it on myself. And I think my father saw in that first library in Bahun Danda what my life might become if I said, I'm not going to stop at one library, I'm not going to stop at 10. I want to open hundreds and one day thousands of libraries. So when I made the decision to quit Microsoft, it was very fortunate because my father had seen the first library in Bahun Danda. So I think he could better understand where my passion was coming from and why I might make such a decision.
I also saw that in your second book. I read you there like many times when you had different challenges, especially for fundraising or resource raising. That time you realized that you might want to go back to Microsoft again, or like still you feel that?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, Room to Read has grown to be a force for good in the universe. Room to Read is going to reach our 10 millionth student this year. We've taken this model that was started here in Nepal and exported it to the rest of the world. So now there's room to read Vietnam, room to read Cambodia, Laos, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India, across sub-Saharan Africa. We've worked now in over 18,000 villages across the developing world, but we'll reach our 10 millionth student by the end of this year. So it's been really fun for us. In the beginning it was frustrating because there was so much need and so many villages that wanted to work with us, but we didn't have the resources to actually say yes to those villages. Now we're able to do things at a much larger scale at Room to Read globally, so it's much more exciting for us because we just see this constant momentum happening, and we constantly have more and more communities asking us to help. They want literacy, they want their kids to learn to read, and they want gender equality for their daughters.
Yeah, I have read, and I know a little bit about the reason behind you left Microsoft and you wanted to do something to change the world. So would you like to share a little bit of your opinion on that, because I'm sure that most of our viewers, they haven't got a chance to read your book yet. So would you like to mention a little bit of your mission when you started?
Well, yeah, the mission is very simple. In the world today, the most educated people make the most money, and the least educated people make the least money. And it is a poverty trap. Because as that headmaster in Bahundanda said to me back in 1998, he said, in this part of the world, we are too poor to afford education for our children. But until we have education, we're always going to remain poor. And to me, that's the cruelest irony in the world, that a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old can be told you were born in the wrong place, at the wrong time, to the wrong family. And you therefore will not get educated, and because you're not educated, you're always going to remain poor. Maybe you do day labor and make 100 rupees a day. But no education means you're probably going to remain poor. So Room to Read's belief is that world change starts with educated children. We believe in breaking the cycle of poverty through the power of education. And we are really excited about how far we've come, that we have, by the end of this year, 10 million students will have been reached by Room to Read. And I think that's a game changer, that, you know, education is the one thing that's been proven long-term as the best ticket out of poverty. So I'm excited about how far Room to Read's come. But I'm well aware there's still millions and millions and millions of children we haven't reached, and we have to keep thinking big about how can we reach more children in more places as quickly as possible, because every day we lose is a day we can't get back.
So when you'll feel that, okay, it's done, you have achieved your mission?
It's going to take a long time to get there, because our mission is universal education. Our mission is that no child is ever again told you were born to the wrong parents, in the wrong country, in the wrong village, and you therefore will not get educated. So in the world today, over 150 million kids don't go to school. 770 million people today are illiterate. 2/3 of them are girls and women. So there's a big job ahead. Like, I don't think I'm going to wake up one day and say, oh, the world's educated, the world's literate. It'll be a long-term battle, but it's the most important battle we can fight. Because for your viewers who are educated, I would just remind people, without education, you're not you. Without education, I'm not me. Without education, we would not have the lives we've had. So my challenge to the rest of the world, of those of us who are educated, is to say, will you go out of your way to make that same opportunity available for a child who might not otherwise have a chance to get educated?
Would you like to call Nepal as your second home?
Yeah, I love it here. It's a great country. I mean, I love the people. I love trekking. I love the sense of hospitality that I see when I'm here, that people make me feel so welcome. I love the food. As you may know, I'm a big fan of momos and I'm a big fan of chili chicken. So I just love being in Nepal, and I try to come back here as often as possible. This is I think my 12th trip to Nepal, and I don't plan to stop coming. As long as Nepal will have me as their guest, I will keep coming back.
How was it for you when you heard about this earthquake in Nepal?
That was terrible.
So how was the feeling you went through?
You know, it was very emotional for me. I had just gotten off a long set of flights. I just flown from Hong Kong to London, and then London to Chicago. And so I had been out of communications with the rest of the world for about 16 or 17 hours. And when I got to my hotel in Chicago and then heard this terrible news from Nepal, it just hit me so hard that these are villages we work in. These are people that we know. This is a country that we love. And I think all of us have known that at some point in time a major earthquake was going to hit Nepal. It was statistically inevitable that those two plates were going to smash. For me, it was very, very emotional. And I vowed right then and there that I would raise as much money as I could and challenge our local team here in Nepal at Room to Read to say, let's think big, because Room to Read went into Sri Lanka after the tsunami, and we rebuilt over 100 schools within 3 years of the tsunami. I look at Nepal now and I think we got to do that same thing. We have to think big, and we have to help these rural communities, whether they're in Sindapolchak or Nuwakot or Dading, wherever they are. We have to help these rural communities rebuild, and we have to get kids back into school so that their life can be better post-earthquake.
Yes, you have helped us a lot to make very nice libraries in more than 1,000 schools. But recently, like I was going through one of the data, it says that 32,000 classrooms has been demolished and destroyed. So it's more than 100,000 students are outside their classroom. So are you going to change your focus, or you're going to remain with the books, or you're going to help with other resources as well through your organizations?
Yeah, so for Room to Read, we actually work in quite a few provinces that were not impacted by the earthquake. So in those provinces, for Room to Read, it's business as usual. It's literacy work, library work, girls' education work. For places we do work that were affected by the earthquake, for example, Nuwakot, we will be changing our plan and focusing much more on school reconstruction. So that's been the focus of my meetings with the Ministry of Education this week, is how can Room to Read get in and help to rebuild schools? Also, how can we rebuild schools in a smarter way? Because we don't want to live in a world where when there's an earthquake, 32,000 classrooms get destroyed, right? It makes more sense, I think, to build the way that Room to Read has always built, with reinforced concrete construction, working in partnership with groups like the Nepali Society for Earthquake Technology to make sure that our schools are set up to be able to withstand seismic events. In Nuwakot and Dading province, our teams estimate that only 7% of the schools we built have been completely destroyed. The norm in that part of the world is about 70%. So we know our methods of construction have withstood their first major test. Now what we will hope to be able to do is help to work through the Ministry of Education partnership to make sure that those best practices become the new standard for Nepal. So when these schools are rebuilt, they're not just rebuilt, but in the words of President Clinton, as he said about Haiti, build back better. That's our goal.
So you're going to carry our message, our request to the world to support us to have better education for tomorrow. Like we have got so much damage during this earthquake. So I believe that you are here to get to know all these current scenario in better way, so that you can go around to raise more resources for us.
I think Nepal can consider me and consider our team to be ambassadors at large for the country. So I'll be traveling the world in the next couple of months and taking my colleague Rishi as a fantastic photographer. So we're taking those images and those videos and taking them everywhere in the world, from Hong Kong to Tokyo, from Aspen, Colorado to Chicago, and telling people Nepal is in need, right? 1 million students in Nepal are learning outdoors or learning in temporary tent schools. And our goal at Room to Read and a lot of other NGOs' goals is basically to say, let's try to build these schools back so that kids can get back to a sense of normalcy.
So yeah, I was thinking about that. I would like to call you educational ambassador for this country. Like you're taking, and also in your second book, I would say that the slogan or the subline is the gift given to the world by Nepal. So what is that? How do you define this? Like, yeah, I understand that. I know the value of like what you have been carried to the world, and you have been, as an ambassador, you have been saying to the world our story and collecting all these resources. But what are the other things you would like to talk about Nepalese society and education system when you go around to the other countries?
Well, because Nepal was the country of Room to Read's birth, a lot of the education programs that we have now won awards for were started here in Nepal. And the key thing is they were not started by me, an American. They were started by our team, Dinesh Shrestha, our co-founder, his team in Nepal. They're the ones who pioneered our local language publishing program. They're the ones who pioneered our girls' education program. They started our life skills training so that girls would actually learn life skills. And what's happened as a result of that is that so many communities around the world have now benefited from this model that started in Nepal, that was tested in Nepal, that was refined in Nepal. So when I say that Room to Read is kind of, Nepal's gift to the world, I say that because we've impacted 2 million students here in Nepal, but Room to Read's impacted 8 million students outside of Nepal, from Vietnam to South Africa, from Tanzania to Cambodia, from Bangladesh to Sri Lanka. So thinking about that for a minute, the fact that 8 million children outside of Nepal have benefited from programs that were started here and tested here, I think is one reason that Nepal can be very, very proud. And again, that was Nepal staffers at Room to Read who run and who modify these programs to get them better over time.
Okay, so I could see that in this book as well, in this book cover, that you're really enjoying. I could say that in your face, that you're really enjoying with kids and everyone. So what is there like in kids or their life or which attracts you more and keep you awake to collect more resources for them?
Well, I think children have an inherent sense of optimism. Children don't filter themselves, they say what's on their mind. They like to have fun, they like to play games, but they also like to read. And kids, when kids can read, they love to show off their reading skills. They love to read aloud to you. And so for me, most of my time is spent running around the world, circling the globe, on airplanes, off airplanes, raising money, raising money, raising money. But when I am able to then go and meet the students who benefit from our work, meet the teachers, meet the parents, see the students and how proud they are that they can read, see the students as they show off their reading skills, those are the moments that make me the happiest, to know that we're having a real impact on the ground.
I'm sure there must have been like more than 100 times where you felt really good that you're doing, or more than 1,000 times you have been felt very like moments has touched you. But would you like to share a couple of out of them where you felt like, okay, you're really doing great things when you saw them reading, or when they shared some of their story with you?
Yeah, there was one village I was in Vietnam for a library opening ceremony. And the whole village was there, over 1,000 students were there, and they did the ribbon cutting, and there was a band, and everybody was very, very excited. And I walked into the library, and this young Vietnamese boy, he must have been about 9 years old, walked up to me and said, "Hello, Mr. Wood, I wish to welcome you to our library." And he shook my hand and he said, "I love our library, and I've already begun reading." And I said, "How? The library just opened. How have you begun reading already?" And this young boy was so excited about the library opening that he had climbed in the window the night before and started reading books. And he said, "Mr. John, I read 9 books last night." And he was so proud. And I thought about that was a little bit of a reflection of me, that when I was his age, I loved to read. My parents encouraged me to read, but I was fortunate enough that I grew up in a middle-class community in America where we had a school library, and we also had a community library. So my life was rich in books. And when I see a child like this who's so eager to read, I see this. These kids are in grade 1 or grade 2 and they're reading aloud. They're reading 30 words a minute. They're reading 40 words per minute. They're not reading at a slow pace. They're reading at a very fast pace. They're mentally processing it. And I think that's the most hopeful thing in the world, that if a child at age 6 or 7 or 8 is reading, they're reading at a fast speed, they have high comprehension, and they're enjoying it, then that child is set for life, because they're always going to be learning. And you and I both know the pace of change in the world today is so fast, we have to constantly be learning. But without literacy, without being in the habit of reading, learning is almost impossible for most people.
Have you been able to go to any schools after this earthquake during this time?
Yeah, I was actually at a school this afternoon, and it was interesting because this was a secondary school outside of Kathmandu, where Room to Read has 29 girls in our long-term girls education program. We sponsor long-term scholarships for girls to make sure that they can stay in secondary school and graduate from secondary school. Oftentimes they're the first in their family to graduate. In this particular school, there are literally thousands upon thousands of families still sleeping outdoors in tents. We have 29 girls in our program in this school. 26 of them lost. Every single girl is still coming to school each and every day, because our social mobilizers, the strong female employees of Room to Read after the earthquake, went out to those tents every single day and said, "The school's reopening in 10 days. Be sure you're ready." Some of the girls had said when they were actually had people trying to dig the rubble out of, dig the homes and go through the rubble, the girls were saying, can you please find my school uniform? Can you please find my books? The girls didn't talk about the loss of their home. They talked about the loss of their school. They can't go to school now. And Room to Read's team said, no, 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 no. We'll buy you new books. We will buy you a new school uniform. So these girls, all 29 of them, came back to school on day one. And they come every single day, even though their lives are so tough. They're still living in tents. And my colleague Rishi said it very well. He said the earthquake may have destroyed their homes, but it did not destroy.
Yes, that's true. And thank you for that message. And also, like, it's been like 17 years you're trying all these different things. Or is there any changes on your tools, like what you're providing to kids? Books and other things. So are you planning to change your tools, like going digitize or digital way or other resources?
Not in the short term now. If you look at the data, we are maniacal about collecting data. We're always collecting data on the efficacy of our work, how well are things going, and our model's been proven to work. Our model, children in grade 2 in Nepal are reading at 41 words per minute, and in the schools that we support, they're reading at 14 words per minute in the control schools we test. Children in Bangladesh are reading at 55 words per minute. So I'm a big fan of the old adage, if it's not broken, don't fix it. What we do works, it works very well. We have data to prove it, and now we want to scale it up. More literacy programs, more books, more trained teachers in more places, not just in Nepal, but across South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa.
I would like to talk with you about your challenges. The first challenge is how challenging it was when you started a well set up office and in very like well established, world famous organization, that title, and very successful figure and different targets. But here you started with different objective. So how challenging it was to change, or the transition was, it have been very challenging.
You're asking like about the transition from Microsoft to doing Room to Read?
Yes.
It was very difficult because when I was at Microsoft, I was Director of Business Development for Greater China. I lived in Beijing. I covered mainland China, Taiwan, Hong Kong. I had a title. I made a lot of money. I had a car and a driver, and a lot of people wanted to talk to me because I was a Microsoft executive. Then fast forward a month after I quit, and all of a sudden nobody knows who I am. John who, room to what? I mean, I'd lost my status in life. And Room to Read was not, you know, we didn't have a lot of money. I mean, I didn't make enough money at Microsoft that I could actually fund everything myself. I had to go out and fundraise from the very beginning. So that was very tough in the early years because people didn't know who I was. People didn't know what Room to Read was, and I had to basically always be in sales mode, telling people, you know, selling. Can you build a school in Nepal? Will you fund a library? Will you fund a girls' scholarship? And the first years were very lean years. Our first year, I think we raised $35,000. Our second year, we raised about $165,000. Now, fast forward, this year we will raise $50 million. So we've come very, very far, very, very fast. But it's good because the more money we can raise, the more communities we can say yes to, the more communities we can help to get their kids educated.
Which is like how challenging it was to start it in Nepal.
It was a challenge to start in Nepal, but it wasn't a challenge for me because Dinesh Shrestha, my co-founder, built the initial team. And so what we decided early on is we'd do a division of labor, that Dinesh would build out the Nepal team, my colleague and co-founder Aaron would build out the Vietnam team, and my job was to really travel the world and fundraise. So it's a very different set of challenges. But I think if you ever want to have Dinesh and his team on the program, they could probably tell you a lot about the unique challenges, right, in Nepal, where our bias is towards rural areas. Those rural areas are hard to get to. The road infrastructure can be difficult. Many of the villages we work with can be a 3-hour walk, a 5-hour walk from the nearest road in a hilly mountain area. So these villages can be very, very difficult to reach. But quite often, I think what we find most inspiring is that we require the villages we work with to put resources into each project. Room to Read does not do everything for them. We say we're not going to do it for you, we're going to do it with you. And so in the early years, Dinesh and his team had to go out and talk to the community to say, we're not going to build a school for you. The community is going to have to donate the labor and the land and actually build the school themselves using volunteer labor. And that's one way we made sure early on that we would have community buy-in, community engagement. And that, of course, makes the project more sustainable because the communities we work with felt a strong sense of ownership because they themselves had built a school or they themselves had built a library.
Also, I really felt good to know that you're invited by President Clinton, and he also gave you nice acknowledgement and also requested you to be one of the directors or in his team. And also you were invited by Oprah. That gave you very good visibility in world media, and also that must have helped you to raise more fund. So how was it?
It's worked out very well. So, you know, President Clinton was kind enough to endorse my first book, Microsoft Bahundanda. In English, it was published as Leaving Microsoft to Change the World. And because President Clinton mentioned our work in his book called Giving, and then actually endorsed my book, that helped us a lot to get people to read it and then get people to realize there was a way they could help the rural communities in the developing world to get education. Being on Oprah's show certainly helped a lot. We did something called Oprah's Book Drive, where we asked Oprah's viewers to donate money to Room to Read. And the idea is every time they donated $1 US, we would be able to print one additional children's book. Well, her viewers donated over $3 million. So think about the number of books we're able to produce just as a result of one media interview.
Did you have a dream to meet President Clinton when you were in Microsoft?
I did. President Clinton was always one of my heroes because I think President Clinton was a very great leader for America. He managed the very difficult thing of balancing the budget while simultaneously bringing unemployment down and driving strong economic growth. So over the course of the 8 years that Clinton was president, the American economy went through a very, very nice 8-year run. And I think Clinton was an idealist. He still is an idealist, but he's also a pragmatist. Clinton thinks up here about idealism, but then he very quickly gets down to the what's going to work, what's not going to work, how are we going to do this. So he's definitely one of my heroes.
Would it have been that possible if you were still in Microsoft?
No, I don't. If I was at Microsoft, I don't think I would have probably never met President Clinton. I think because I'm at Room to Read, I get a chance to meet some interesting people as I travel.
Mr. Wood, thank you for your contribution to this country. We really respect your involvement, your contribution. Would you like to add anything at the end?
No, thank you for having me on the show. And I think what I'd add is just, I want to just tell the people of Nepal that so many of us have a sadness in our heart for what Nepal has gone through. But we also know that Nepal is a very resilient nation, and we wish to be a big part of the rebuilding. We know that Nepal is going to look forward in the same way that Sri Lanka had to look forward post-tsunami, in the same way that Sri Lanka had to look forward post-Civil War. Those things happen in Nepal. Nepal's moved forward past the Civil War, and now hopefully Nepal will move forward past the earthquake. And I plan to be one of many, many, many ambassadors at Room to Read for the people of Nepal and for the rebuilding post-earthquake.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dhanyavad.
We'd like to wish you all the best for your journey and your mission.
Thank you very much.
दर्शकवृन्द, आज हामीले माइक्रोसफ्टदेखि बाहुनडाँडाका लेखक र साक्षर संसारतिरका लेखक मिस्टर जन वुडसँग कुरा गऱ्यौँ। उहाँ रुम टु रिडका संस्थापक हुनुहुन्छ। उहाँले माइक्रोसफ्ट छोडेर यो साक्षरताको अभियानमा लाग्नुभयो। उहाँको हाम्रो राष्ट्र, हाम्रो बालबालिका र यो देशको विद्यार्थीहरूको लागि साक्षरताको लागि उहाँको योगदानलाई आज फेरि भावपूर्ण रेस्पेक्ट गर्दै र त्यो उहाँको कन्ट्रिब्युसन जारी रहोस् भन्ने शुभकामनाको साथ आजको यस विशेष कार्यक्रमको यही समाप्तिको हजुरहरूलाई जानकारी गराउँदै आगामी दिनमा फेरि यस्तै विशेष सन्दर्भहरू लिएर प्रस्तुत हुनेछौँ। खबरभित्रको खबरको लागि हेर्दै गर्नुहोस् एभेन्यूज टेलिभिजन। नमस्कार।